there, and welcome to Jeff Does Vegas 2022 in Review. As the year comes to an end, I've decided to take a little trip back in time and reshare some of my favorite conversations from the last 12 months of the podcast. For the first episode of 2022 in Review, I wanted to pay tribute to the amazing entertainers who took time out of their busy lives to jump on the show and chat with me. Singers, musicians, showgirls, comedians, even an exotic dancer all made it on the podcast this year. We covered a ton of great topics, and it was an absolute blast talking to all of these incredibly talented people. Enjoy. After catching a late-night viewing of the 1995 classic Showgirls, starring Elizabeth Berkley, I thought it might be fun to chat with someone who's actually lived the Las Vegas showgirl lifestyle and see just how close to reality the movie actually was. After all, the director and writer claimed to have spoken with dozens of people working in the Vegas entertainment biz so they could get it right. So, did they? Who better to tell us than a legit Vegas showgirl? Back in episode number 125, I was joined by Danny Elizabeth, who's a former cast member of the legendary shows Jubilee and Crazy Girls. We did some character analysis, shared theories on why people love to watch the movie over and over again, and we compared Danny's showgirl life to Nomi Malone's, including the audition process. Was Danny's anything like Nomi's?
Not even close. Way different. And now, keep in mind, maybe in the 80s, there were more cringy moments for dancers. But when I auditioned, in the last, I'd say 20 years or so, things have become a lot more corporate. And, there's HR departments and PC, politically correct moments that have to be honored. So when I auditioned, it's just like going to any other audition. You wear a leotard or, briefs and like a two-piece. And it actually is a very extensive audition process. We had to learn tap choreography. We had to learn jazz choreography, and then we had to do ballet across the floor. So it took a few hours to get through it. And then after that, yes, they do bring you into a private room. And Diane Palm, she was the company producer for Jubilee. And she started in Jubilee when it first opened as a dancer in it. And then she moved up. And so then, because Dawn Arden was no longer around, and the company producer Fluff, she took Diane in as the assistant. And then when I finished, she was now the company producer. But it was very professional. And then they would, after the audition, if they kept you, one by one, take you into a private room, like a little office, and they could take one at a time. And you would take your top off so that she could see, because they also wanted to make sure that you didn't have implants, because that was not preferred. They preferred small and pretty over huge and fake. So they would do that, but it was felt very comfortable, and she was very professional and very caring about it. And then after that, we'd go back out into the main room, and then they would also measure our height. So we'd stand up against the wall, and she would write that down as well, just to make sure that no one's lying on the resume, because we all try to get a little bit extra in there. Because if you don't know, the taller you are, the better it is to land a showgirl job. And then that's it. And then you go home and you wait for a phone call. And then when she called me, and she was like, "Yes, Danny, so we'd like to offer you the position." And they have two different positions. You're either a bluebell or a showgirl, which is like the bluebell are covered dancers, and the showgirls are topless dancers, which Diane said that she didn't even really like to use the term showgirl, because she thought that showgirl didn't honor how much you actually dance. She thinks, because back when this whole showgirl thing came about, the showgirls were more statuesque. So they were the 6'2" Amazon women that wore the big giant costumes in the back, and then all the other dancers would be in front, and some were topless, some weren't. And now that has changed. And at Jubilee, if you were the showgirl or topless track, you still dance just as much as the covered track did. But so when she called me, and and asked me if I would take the position. I, of course, jumped right on it, and then moved to Vegas. And we had about a month-long rehearsal process.
So what you're saying then is at no point did anybody hand you a bowl of ice and say, take your top off and show me your, again, I mean, speaking of cringy moments, that was without a doubt one of the cringiest.
Super cringy. I was like, whoa, no wonder why she stormed out of there. I would too. And no, it's so not like that. It's so much more, at least from my experience. Again, I don't know if somebody in the 80s felt differently, but I know at Jubilee, it wasn't like that. Even when Don Arden, the head producer, and I've heard stories that he might have been a little bit, had some of those aspects of like the sleazy producer moments, but he was a very professional, producer and cared about his dancers to the end. So I would have to say, yeah, that's definitely a very embellished scene.
Up next, we go all the way back to episode number 102 and my chat with Enoch Augustus Scott, who's been part of the Vegas entertainment scene for almost 20 years. Enoch got his start in Vegas as part of the iconic Tony and Tina's Wedding, and he currently stars as Xenoch, the MC in the hilarious Zombie Burlesque at the V Theater in Planet Hollywood. Enoch and I chatted about his early days in entertainment, some of his early Vegas gigs, and he shared what might be the most Vegas-y Vegas story I've ever heard.
I had to kick a hooker out a week and a half ago.
I saw that on your Twitter. Now, this is probably the most Vegas entertainer story that I've ever heard in my life. So I'm going to need you to share it because the tweet just absolutely slayed me.
It's like in the front row, even up against the wall. In our theater strange, there's only one aisle, and so there's only one way to get out. So if you're up against the wall, you have to cross over everyone and get out. So come in late, this guy and this chick who was very, very pretty and, very, very Vegas-ly dressed, and this guy who looked like she was completely out of his league. It just, anyway, looked like an arrangement to me. So it was cool for a while, and then she just starts getting louder and louder, and just like, there are those people who want just heckling you and just like not stopping and like interrupting scenes. And she's just getting progressively louder. And finally I had to turn to her and be like, hey, it's too much now. Please stop. Like in front of the audience and stuff, I'm doing this. Like, please, it's too much. You have to stop. Turn to the guy and I'm like, hey, you have to take care of this. You have to handle her. And she's like, no, I want you to handle me. It's like, what I wanted to say is like, I didn't dial like 976 girls direct to you today. So please, I'm not handling you. That's not my job. And so I was like, listen, if you can be cool, listen, I'm literally saying this in front of the audience. I was like, if you can be cool, you can stay. But if you say one more thing, you've got to go. And I was like, audience, is it cool if she stays? And they're like, okay. So then like, there's an adagio, there's the 2 quiet moments. I'm off stage. I come back and like, she yells out something again. And you could hear the audience just go like, and then I was like, and then I come back out and I'm trying to do this tender speech where I go like, it doesn't matter if you're white, white, black, red, yellow, blue, and I'm about to say green, but of course people also do that phrase and say purple. So every now and then people like to scream out purple. So she, of course, screams out, purple! And I was like, okay, I just can't anymore, honey. You got to go. And she's like, what? No, I'm your best friend. I was like, no, you have to go now. And so then my stage hands, like, the ushers aren't there, so I have to call my stage hands. One is Dan, he's a little fit guy, but the other is Silver, and we call him Silverback. He's like 6'3" and like this big guy. And so I was like, Dan, Silverback, and you can hear the audience be like, Silverback, would you please come escort this young lady out of the theater? And so she gets up and is walking out and just talking shit. They're like, I can't believe it. I'm such an awful person. I can't believe, like, just all the way. And then he is sitting there, and I was like, no, bro, you got to go too. You got to return this hooker to her pimp because you got a defective hooker, honey. You got a hooker that don't know how to act at a show. Like, you want to bring a hooker to a show, great. But, she has to know how to act, honey. Like, so I had to and kick the guy out, too. I couldn't believe the guy was just sitting there. I was like, no, baby. You need to take her back to where you found her.
I do love the fact that the dude was just kind of like, oh, I'm not with her. I don't know who she is or what.
Man alive, honey. Man alive, honey. Take her back to Tropicana. And then the thing is, like, the night before, there was this 11-year-old kid who read as trans to me. I thought it was a boy, but then there were nails and stuff. So to me, it looked like a trans kid. And but 11 years old, and I couldn't believe it. So I always have a bit with it if there's kids in the audience. I'm like, blah, blah, blah. But I'm doing that final speech. This night's before the hooker gets kicked out. A completely different night. I'm doing that final tender speech, and the kid goes like, she's like, honestly, just says during a break, which is the nice way to heckle or not heckle, but just talk back. She's like, honestly, I can't wait to meet you. And my heart was broken. I couldn't finish my monologue. So we don't do meet and greet anymore because of COVID. But I went back after the show. I just snuck out and met the kid. It turns out the kid they wanted to come there for their birthday. Their mom tells me to zombie burlesque in Vegas to see my stupid show for their birthday. And then it's like a mom and the kid and a grandma. And there's a service dog too that I didn't even notice until that moment. I was like, that service dog sat through my whole show. And it's loud and crazy. It was fine and polite, but a hooker can't sit through it.
According to a recent report, strip clubs in the United States are forecasted to pull in roughly $7.4 billion in revenue this year. In Las Vegas alone, there are over 20 different clubs for people to visit. Often, visiting a strip club in Vegas is a person's first experience with this type of establishment. And if you've never been to a strip club, you've probably got a lot of questions. Back in episode number 115 of the podcast, I was joined by Kayla, who is currently a dancer at a gentleman's club in Las Vegas. We covered a lot of ground in our conversation, and she answered a ton of questions about everything from strip club etiquette to what her daily routine entails, and she even answered the question she gets asked the most. How and why did she pick this industry as her career?
It wasn't really my idea, but I originally was working at some boba restaurant, just like a little restaurant, and I hated it. It just wasn't good. And, I was broke and I didn't have any money. And my friend was like, hey, why don't you just dance with me? And she was working with me at that time at the restaurant. And I was like, I don't know if I can be in a two-piece and I can't even walk in high heels and I'm skinny and I have no tits. I don't know how to dance. I just don't know. I don't know if I can do it. She's like, just try it out. I'll go with you and, I'll show you how to do it and yada, yada, yada. So I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to do it, So I ended up auditioning and I got it. And I worked the next night, which was my 20th birthday. So I got hired the day before my birthday, my 20th birthday. So yeah, I just went in and danced and made money and then just never looked back.
Tell me a little bit about the audition process to become a dancer, because I've got friends that are involved in various facets of the entertainment industry, and I've heard about their audition process. Share your audition experience with me.
So you do have to call and see when auditionings are. So mostly they're every single day. They ask you to come in from a certain time. They ask you to bring a two-piece and a high heels. So then you just, you go in, you talk to the hiring manager, the house mom is there, and then they make you go on stage for about 3 songs. So the first song, you do have to take your top off. And at this time, when I was young, the younger you are, the club is going to be fully nude, 18 and up. If you're 21 and up, it's just topless. So at the time I was working at a fully nude club, which I hated. I was really uncomfortable doing it, but I got used to it. So the auditioning, I just had to go on stage for 3 songs. The first song, take off your top. And then I think the second song, take off your bottoms. And then the third song, you kind of just dance around the pole. So I went in as early as possible that they told me to come in because I didn't want to catch any customers or anything like that. So, but yeah, that's pretty much the auditioning process.
That seems absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, you're butt ass naked on stage, in front of strangers, and you've never done it before. Yeah, it's a lot of anxiety.
I can't even imagine. I get changed in the dark, Kayla. So, I mean, to have that put on top of me would just be like next level anxiety. That's insane.
Yeah.
You mentioned that it was a friend or coworker that got you involved in dancing initially. Did you find it helpful to have that person able to kind of give you support and help you out as you made your way into the business?
I did. Yeah. It was really comforting, because I never really thought to dance. But when she brought it up, I was like, you know what? Like, it felt good that I wasn't by myself. And it also felt good that there was other girls there that, knew that I was new, and they were really sweet and helpful. I mean, of course, you're going to run into girls that are really rude and, talk shit to you and stuff. But yeah, no, I definitely had the support, and I felt comfortable. So
that dynamic in the dressing room among the girls has got to be interesting. And I use the air quotes when I say interesting. I mean, I've got lots of female friends, and I kind of sort of hear the drama that's going on in their lives and amongst each other and such. So I can only imagine what it's like in that situation, in your situation, in that dressing room. Are there people that kind of help keep things in line and keep people moving forward and try to avoid the drama, or how does that all sort of shake out amongst the ladies?
I've never really seen anything crazy happen, to be quite honest. I mean, I've worked at a bunch of different clubs, and yeah, of course, like I've heard girls about to get physical and, talking back and forth and, disrespecting each other. But, yeah, I mean, honestly, they kind of just handle it themselves. Like if they fight, they're going to fight. I don't know what's the outcome of that. I'm assuming management will come in and be like, you guys can't do that. But some clubs, I'm assuming, that are a little bit different. They're kind of like, you handle it, you do your own or whatever. I'm guessing, but I've never really seen anything that crazy. So I can't really say anything much about that. So, but I mean, of course, defend yourself, but I've never gone to that point. Thank God. I mean, I've had gone to arguments with girls, but not in a physical fight. And I've never really started, it's usually them because they're drunk or they're just stupid, but I'm just mind my business and I work and I go home.
So in other words, it's like any other job. You go in, you do your thing, you leave, except butt ass naked.
Exactly. Butt ass naked in heels. Exactly.
Las Vegas-based comedian Dennis Blair fell into the world of comedy quite accidentally. In the late 1970s, he was performing in bars around New York City, and tired of being ignored by audiences, one night he decided to mess with the lyrics to a popular song. The rest, as they say, is history. Over his 40-year-long career, he's worked with the likes of comedy legends Rodney Dangerfield and Joan Rivers, and opened for musicians like Tom Jones, Gloria Estefan, and the Beach Boys. But it was the 18 years that he spent as the opener for the late, great George Carlin that really caught my attention. Dennis joined me back on episode number 131 of the podcast, and not only did we talk about his time on stage working with George, but the off-stage times as well.
Yeah, a great guy, totally approachable. We go to airports, we take rental cars to the theater. I mean, he'd get the occasional limousine, but as a matter of fact, when he started doing really well, he started chartering planes, which was another wonderful story. But when I first was with him, I'd fly commercial. They'd fly commercial, they fly first class, of course. And as I got on, they'd say, "Keep walking, Dennis. Back with the sweaty pigs," or something like that. But I mean, people at the airport come, "George, how you doing? Hey, how you doing, man?" Shake his hand, take a picture, that kind of stuff. Yeah, and very funny. And the great thing about George was he was a hermit. He didn't like to hang out too much. He hung out with me backstage because we had a lot of laughs. Or if we were, in the rental car or the car on the way to the gig. But once you get to the gig and backstage at the gig, but once you get back to the hotel, you don't see each other until the next gig, and that was after my experience with Rodney and, to some extent Joan. I said, great, less can go wrong. Because I don't see George a lot, but when I do see him, it's great. But then, so that's the thing I was very happy about. We won't have too much contact. So my dog, whatever, so I don't do something wrong and piss him off.
I can only imagine what those car rides with George would have been like. I mean, George, his mind was amazing. Like it seems like he would be the type of person that his mind would just always be going. So I can really only imagine what the car rides were like.
Oh yeah. Well, first of all, we both had a period of a Jerry Lewis obsession for some reason, and we just kept doing his live and climb. Why? Yeah, he'd leave me notes with Jerry Lewis and draw a word balloon that said Floyd, and stuff like that. So there was that, and then one car ride we took, we came up with these games. Like the car ride back to the hotel would often be like less than an hour, so it wasn't too much time. But we came up with this game. It's like we'd have come up with a premise and then like try to top each other. So one premise was female stars who have the bushiest pubic hair. And George won because he said Rhea Perlman. And he said, "Yeah, no, you win. You definitely win on that one." But this is the kind of stuff. But I won one, and this is totally politically incorrect. But the premise that we came up with is Kennedy's last words. And I forget what George said, but I came up with, "Why is my head whistling?" Okay. Now, I'm a horrible person for saying that, but I won. I don't care.
Horrible person for laughing at it.
I won, goddammit. I'm taking that to the grave. Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff we do. And then once I was with him by himself, the manager would come. So he told me the whole story of his last appearance at the Copacabana. And it was like a 10, 20-minute story. I'm just driving going, I can't believe he's telling me this, Yeah, so we had fun in the car, fun backstage. And when we did Vegas, we'd do like 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So no one saw him. He was in his room writing his next special, probably. Mm-hmm. So I'd had my kids at that time and my wife, and we just hang out at the pool and have fun and see him backstage.
Did George like the Vegas crowds? And the only reason I ask is he was a very intelligent comic. And I'm not saying that Vegas crowds aren't intelligent, because I've been to so many shows and they are, and they can be, but I feel like it's a different level. And with George's comedy, as I say, like it was very intelligent, and it just did he like the Vegas crowd?
No. Does that answer your question?
No.
What else would you like to ask me? Again, it was when we first started, obviously I think when we first started doing Vegas, he was okay with them. But as time went on, and as we found out that he was having, he'd had years of addictions to Vicodin, red wine, and his heart problems were starting again, and he got grumpier. He hated them, absolutely hated them. But at the beginning, the Vegas showrooms aren't really made for comedy. I don't think. Like the ceilings are too high. They're not hot rooms. So he was used to the theaters where they would just come to see him. They were his fans. They come to see George. Vegas, it's almost like, well, we can't get into Celine Dion, so I don't know. You want to go see this Carlin guy? They don't even know who he is. Probably half of them. And then he wouldn't hold back. So people are just, he's filthy, he's disgusting, that kind of stuff. So he had to deal with that. But he dealt with it the first, how long we do, 10, 15 years or something like that. But as time went on, he just got more and more disenchanted, and he just said, "I hate these guys." And once, I remember I was downstairs in the dressing room, and I could hear him, not clearly. I could hear a little bit, but I could tell by the cadence of the sounds I was hearing that he wasn't doing his act at that moment. So I run upstairs, and he is ripping the audience a new one. It's like, you fucking people. You guys, you're sitting there and you're just groaning, and I have a great career and I hate this fucking town and all this. It just went on for like 3 minutes. And then the funniest thing to me is he rips these people saying, so fuck you. I hope you all die in a fire, you stupid fucking people. Then there's a pause, and I now like to talk about dogs and cats. like nothing ever happened. Which was the thing that I enjoyed. But he did that a few times, and he finally said, I'm not doing Vegas anymore. He came back to the Orleans maybe 2 years later, because they begged him, and because that was off the strip, and those hotels he did off the strip, that people would seek him out, so it would be more of his fans. So I think he kind of liked it there.
October 21st, 1977 saw the release of what would eventually become one of the best-selling albums of all time, and my personal favorite album of all time, Meatloaf's Bat Outta Hell. It's sold over 43 million copies worldwide, it's 14 times platinum in the US, and it's spent a record 530 weeks on the UK album charts. 40 years later, the album was reworked into a musical, which originally opened in London's West End. After a run in Toronto and a tour around the world, it was announced that in the fall of 2022, the Paris Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas would become home to a new resident production of Bat Outta Hell, the musical. On episode number 133 of the podcast, I was joined by Vegas veteran Ann Martinez, who took on the role of Sloane in the production. We talked about some of Ann's past performances around Las Vegas, what makes Bat Outta Hell such a special show, and where her love for the music of Jim Steinman and Meatloaf comes from.
Jim Steinman, when he was writing it, he was in college, and he had this dream of writing this kind of Peter Pan-esque musical, and that's the first album. So he actually wanted it to be a musical, and he couldn't find just the backing for it. And in frustration, he was like, oh my God, let's just record it like an album, just so I can have a recording. And so it really was intended to be a musical, the first album. And then quite accidentally, the album blew up because like everyone just was going crazy about it. So everything Jim wrote, all of his music and that Meatloaf was singing, it was always intended to be theatrical for a play. And so when I got this job and the producers told me that, I was like, oh my God. And I just went home and I, got a glass of wine, turned the lights out, and just was like, I'm gonna listen to this whole album front to back, knowing that it was meant to be a musical. And it was a totally different experience. I kind of understood, they have those like pauses, and then sometimes they're like talking before something. And I was like, oh my God, that's what he meant this whole time. It's like the music took on a whole new meaning. And all of his stuff, knowing that with his entire canon, really kind of added a different kind of a weight to already brilliant music. It was the first album I ever bought too. My brothers belonged to one of those CD clubs. Remember those? Oh,
yeah. Yeah. I think I still owe Columbia House money, actually.
I think we all do. We all owe them like $5.99. But my brothers were like taking pity on me because I was the baby and I wanted a CD too. And so they're like, okay, fine, you can pick one. And I was trying to be cool. So I picked Bat Outta Hell because the cover was scary. And I thought, okay, they're going to think I'm cool because I'm picking this really scary one. And it came, and same thing. I was just enthralled by the album art. And then I remember, putting it in and Bat Outta Hell started playing. And I was like, whoa, this is awesome. And so I've always loved that music. So it was really cool. When I got that call to come and audition for this, I started kind of devouring all the information I could find about the musical and how it came to be.
Let's talk about the musical, obviously, because it does have a plot. It's got a storyline. What is the story of Bat Outta Hell?
So the Cliff Notes version is it's this post-apocalyptic city, and there's this kind of motorcycle punk gang, and they're all 18 forever, kind of like the Lost Boys in Peter Pan-ish. And they've got all these different characters that are in the group, and they all kind of have their little statuses. And their leader is named Strat, and he's like their crazy fearless leader. And in this city, and they're always just causing chaos. They're spray painting stuff, blowing things up, just being a pain in the butt. And there's this huge tower in the middle of the city, and that's where my character Sloane lives. And I live there with my husband Falco, that's played by Travis Clower. And then we have our daughter named Raven, and that's played by Alize Cruz, and she is turning 18. And the conflict between the parents is the father wants her to stay inside forever. We keep her locked up in this tower, kind of like Rapunzel. And I secretly want her to go out and have some fun. so she ends up falling in love with the head of this gang, Strat, and chaos ensues. So there's these two love stories, the love story between the two young people, and then there's this love story between the parents who had their daughter very young. They were 16. And so they're young parents and very flawed, and they're living in this wild world. Everything's just continual chaos and lots of weather. And it kind of is what happens as the story goes along, and both of them, the challenges both of the couples face, and if they decide to continue together, all surrounded by music and mayhem and magic and Jim Steinman's canon.
It's really kind of a Peter Pan, Romeo and Juliet, all of this sort of rolled into one with some just really kick-ass music thrown in.
Like, just ridiculously kick-ass music.
And last but certainly not least, we head back to episode number 109 for what is not only my favorite interview of the past year, but possibly my favorite interview in the history of doing this podcast. Back in March of 2022, I had the opportunity to sit down and talk with Las Vegas legend Carrot Top. He's got a career that spans over 3 decades. He's toured all over the world. He's made hundreds of TV appearances, and he's been headlining at the Luxor for the past 16 years, with plans to stay there for at least the next 3. We chatted about how he got into prop comedy, how he comes up with new ideas for jokes, and whether or not there's ever been a time that he's gone too far with a gag.
Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, I think every comic, I usually don't go at I never take it. I mean, there's been some I've done everyone has to have one or two. They were like kind of risky. But I think most, I wouldn't say all, most comics, I think they need to, they know the boundaries of what something that might be considered, not even the word inappropriate, just really just too soon kind of thing. So anything that has to do with, death, plane crashes, things that are just horrible, definitely not. I mean, there's just no place for it. Now, the one that I did get away with was in fact, it's funny, the shelf life of jokes when the plane landed in the Hudson. And no one died, boom, you can tell a joke because no one died. And that was the whole thing. Hey, no one died. And we have at the Luxor, there's a bodies exhibit and a Titanic museum. I said, just think if one person had died, we'd have the fucking exhibit right here at the Luxor. And that would just slay, because no one did die. But yeah, if we just think of one person, we would have an exhibit. Hey, go see the Titanic and now go see the Hudson crash, whatever, death on the Hudson. So, we try to keep, I don't have people that tell me what I can do and can't do. I just kind of make the judgment in my own head, what I think might be, and now, as long I'm doing this so long now, seeing the roller coaster of what is inappropriate, what people consider to be inappropriate, it's amazing. I've seen it go. I mean, I've been through the whole, 30 some years of seeing how audiences kind of react and think and look around more than they probably would have back then. I mean, there's always been, that. There's always been that, but we're getting a little better. I think people are trying to start to say, we can't be too sensitive. Especially if you're at a comedy show, it's kind of our job to be a little push it a little bit.
I'm assuming you have got a massive warehouse of props and things that you can have in the
across
archive.
The street. Yeah, it's great. I love walking through there because you see years and years of things that remember that used to do. Oh my God, that used to be such a great. And sometimes it's fun to reinvent them if it's possible. Or a part, like the gas pump handle. I used to be a different joke with that one. So I said, where's that damn gas pump? Because I don't have to go steal another one. So, yeah.
How often do you pull stuff out of the archive and throw it in the show?
It depends on, sometimes, a lot of times. I mean, I'm always changing something. I like to add something from the archives once in a while to keep it fresh for me. And then a lot of times the audience hasn't seen it too. I have a lot of new fans, and I'll present it in the way that, hey, check this out. This is stuff from my the Carrot Classics that goes back to, when I started, and that's kind of fun. People that had seen it will, reminisce and remember it, and people that haven't will like, oh, that's cool. You can see that it's how some of it's dated, which makes it cool. So it shows that you have like stuff that you could tell was, like a bank tube or something joke where they could tell that was old.
I want to talk a little bit about the business of comedy today.
Yeah.
Who do you find funny right now? What are some of your favorite comedians? Nobody.
No, I like, it's funny. I'm kind of, I've just answered this question today with just a friend. They were like, who's the new up and coming young comics you like? And I said, the bad side about doing a show every night here in Vegas and it's not that I can't not do it, but I don't have the luxury I just don't try to explore and look for new comics that are out there, maybe even be a mentor to one. I do my show and then I go home and then it's late and then I go, I don't want to watch comedy. I just want to, and when I lived in LA, I would go to the clubs a lot. Because I would sit in the back and watch all, there could be 30 comics in a night and sit there and go and just laugh and go, wow, that guy's going to be. I mean, I've seen so many that I said that guy's going to be huge, and they ended up being huge. I mean, remember Larry the Cable Guy was a buddy of mine. I said this guy is going to be huge, and boom, I knew. I knew he had that, that shtick too. He just read the phone book and would make you laugh.
Yeah. Do you think present day now with social media being what it is, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, that kind of stuff, do you think it's easier for people to break into comedy and get discovered, or is it a situation where it's just such a diluted?
That is a great question. I wish that was a question I could answer. Because I think I say that all the time. I say, I don't know if I started again right now today, would I have the energy I just remember what a long journey it was getting into this. However, like you just said, with all the other ways like TikTok and all that, there might be more ways to get involved and people see your stuff without waiting at a comedy club until 2 a.m. to perform in front of 10 people. So, there is an advantage probably to that. TikTok crowd, they're funny, and a million people see it in one day, where, it took me, it would take you, 5 years to get 1 million people to see your stuff. So there's a good point there. I don't know if that, the answer, but I know they get a lot of very successful people that have come through the social media aspect of it. Which is funny because I'm trying to do that too, to keep up with the young people, do the TikToks and do all those things and show people, hey, I'm still here. So.
Talking about Las Vegas, I mean, the residency here at the Luxor, this is 16 years now that you've 16. Been here and just signed back on for another.
I think it's either 4 or something. I forget. I think we signed a 5 year. So I don't know if the 1 year counts with COVID, but yeah.
Yeah. At this point, does it even matter how many more years you've signed?
You kind of want to know. Because, you want to know. I don't know how many you have left, so you can kind of plan. But I hope I stay here. I hope I stay here for till the end. But yeah, it's been 16 at this hotel and then 10 at the MGM and 1 at Bally's. So it's been a crazy run.
When you sign a big residency like that, I remember doing an interview one time with Meatloaf, and I asked him about doing a Vegas residency. And he had said at the time he was friends with Bette Midler, and she was doing one here. And he said, oh, hell no, I have no desire to do something like that. I see what she goes through and how much work it is and blah, blah, blah. When you first got that offer to come to the Luxor for a long term like that, was there that apprehension and that concern, like, oh my God, am I going to be able to actually pull this off?
Yes, Meatloaf actually told me that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, I was very, very much apprehensive about it. In fact, I've said it before. When I was at the MGM and I was doing kind of a intermittent residency, it wasn't like a full-on residency like what we have here. It would be like a week, and I'd go on the road. I'd go to Calgary, and then come back to Vegas and do 2 weeks, and then go back on the road and come back to Vegas. I did I think it was 8 to 10 weeks a year, sometimes 12, but not what I'm doing now. Uh-huh. And then when David Copperfield wanted to have that room full time, which I used to make a joke, David Copperfield, how come you left the MGM Grand? It's because David Copperfield made me disappear. And then I went to the newspaper with that, and he called me, literally said, "What the hell?" I said, "It's a joke. You didn't really literally make me disappear, David. You're a magician." And so the Luxor. I remember there was this room was available, or it could be. And my people said to me, "What do you think about it?" And I said, 12 weeks a year, I'll do that. He said, no, full time. And I said, oh, Jesus, it's like a desk job. I don't know if I could do that every night. So we came over, looked at the room. I liked the room. And then I remember thinking, oh my God, can I do like a month and maybe just do and see if I like it? I don't know. I can't sign off. So I think we signed on a year, and I was miserable because I had to stay in the hotel, which is not a bad thing. They have a beautiful hotel, but going go to your room and back of it, the only way to go up and the access to your room back was through the elevator, inclinator sideways.
Yeah.
And you never. I must go get a cup of coffee or go get lunch or go do this. You have to go down the elevator through the people, to the crowd, to the to the casino, and it was just a nightmare. So I think I bit off more than I can chew. I'm not digging this at all. And then I finally found a house, and then I got into a nice little rhythm. Mm-hmm. But it still took I think it was 3 years we had. It took a long time to get used to doing the show every night in the same city, in the same theater. And Vegas is a all different beast. I mean, we go on the road, we do road shows. More than half the crowd's got Carrot Top shirts on. They've prepared and planned for a night out to see Carrot Top. Vegas, sometimes they're like, oh, we can't get into Blue Man Group. We'll go see this Carrot Top guy. It's either blue or orange. And but you might win them over. Mm-hmm. They come and I used to do that, but I'm afraid to ask now. How many people first time seeing my show? And I was, ugh. But you win them over, and then you're like, okay, I just got into a rhythm. One day I just got into a rhythm, and I was like, I love this gig. And then I realized, man, I really don't want to leave, and I want to stay a Vegas guy. And both. I'm just a Vegas guy. People always say, oh, you're just a Vegas guy.
I hope you've enjoyed this little trip back in time to revisit some of my favorite conversations with these incredible Las Vegas entertainers. If you want to check out the entire episodes, you can find the links in the show notes at jeffdoesvegas.com or search them out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.